As far as the outline for this presentation, we're going to take a look at the big picture, why you should take notes, knowing what is important, and developing some specific strategies. In the big picture, we're going to begin with our assigned readings. So as the professor assigns specific readings, you're going to read the material. You're going to take notes of the relevant information from your readings. You're going to use those notes to study. Once you've conducted your studying, you may or may not have writing assignments that you have to complete. You can always refer back to your notes. And as you see, time management is a critical element here because you have to allocate time for reading, for note-taking, for studying, and for writing and completing the assignments from the class. So why take notes? Note-taking stimulates new ideas, helps you solve problems, and helps develop your critical thinking skills. It definitely helps you remember what was discussed in the class, at least the important things, for specific assignments and absolutely for examination preparation. So next thing we're going to take a look at is the 5 C's of note-taking. Okay, the first one is charge. Take charge of your lectures. Listen critically. Don't just hear it. Make sure you listen and identify all the critical elements of the lecture. Connect and capture key ideas and concentrate on the key themes that are being discussed. So with note-taking, tip number 1, be an active reader. What do we mean when we say be an active reader? You need to think about the reading. Consider how each small part relates to the bigger part, to the whole. In other words, seeing the big picture. You should be creating questions about those new words or terms that you don't understand or haven't heard before, and understand why the emphasized points are important, and understand what you've learned from your visual cues. In anchoring and note-taking, obviously life and work experience is going to help solidify your learning. The theories and principles that are discussed in the classroom will help you gain new knowledge, skills, and abilities. With tip number 2 for note-taking, understand the organization of the textbook. It's always good to start with the table of contents. Here you can see the specific topics for each chapter as well as those subheadings. In certain text, they will include summary points which are very helpful for you, the student, after you've read a chapter, discussed a chapter. Review the summary points and to make sure that you have grasped or understood all of the highlights of the chapter. Okay, and again, review the index as well as the glossary. Tip number 3 is to take notes while reading. So as you're conducting reading of a particular text or an article or an assignment, as you come across those key terms, maybe a term that you're not really familiar with, make sure you write it down. Be brief in your descriptions. Summarize in your own words. Okay, you may want to use a form of shorthand here, or develop your own particular writing style with your own symbols. and make sure that you take the time to go back to the textbook and review the questions to develop specific study questions. Tip number 4. Did you understand what you just read? Were you able to identify the main ideas? Did you take the time to identify unclear information and questions? And you should write a summary. With tip number 5, we're going to take a look at reviewing your notes. You should look over your notes frequently on a regular basis. You shouldn't wait a week or 2 weeks between the time you take notes and the time you go back and review them. You need to review them periodically to make sure they stay fresh in your mind. Tip number 6, write. You should be writing summaries of what you consider to be the most important information. You may even want to consider making a quiz for others and maybe exchange them with other students. They'll give you a quiz they made up, you give them a quiz you made up. And you should be able to write some anticipated test questions from your reading and from the specific questions that are asked throughout the textbook. Two specific types of note-taking strategies. One is the Cornell method and another is mind mapping. With the Cornell method, you notice that you have your paper divided into 2 sections, 2 columns. You put your course title, date on the right side. On the left side column, use it for the main notes taken in class. And over on the right side, the narrow column, you write down those key words, phrases, questions, and your own ideas after class. So review from the left column, and any ideas that are stimulated to you or may cause concern or raise questions, jot those down in the right hand side. Mind mapping, this gets a little busy, but your main point or main points is at the center. And with mind mapping model, then you have other main points off of your topic point, and then you have subpoints. So you'll have a main point and then subpoints off of it. In this mind map example, the main topic is leadership qualities. The main point, you notice there are numerous main points. Some of the specific leadership qualities that we see in leaders today could be integrity, passion, commitment, courage, they're goal-oriented, etc. We'll take the integrity leg. So integrity could be a main point as a leadership quality. And what elements make up integrity? Here we said responsible, honest, they have high ethics, and then some of the sub-points under maybe high ethics have to be trustworthy, have to be fair. So you see that in this example you can have many main points and many sub-points. So the next area we want to talk about are studying skills. Again, we see the big picture cycle of success, pretty much the same cycle that we use for note-taking. We begin with the assigned readings. From that we take the notes. We study from those notes. We write to complete whatever assignments have been assigned. And we have to allocate time. We have to allocate time to read. We have to allocate time to take notes. Have to allocate time to study, and allocate time to write. So, when we talk about practical study skills, we have to obviously manage our time wisely. We have to plan, and we have to set specific goals. We are going to take notes, and there has to be a certain element of concentration or we're wasting our time. And specific study skills are going to be dependent upon your particular learning style. Some study skill tips. Set aside a specific time of day to read and study. Make sure you look at previous notes. Do some skimming of the chapters for the major themes. Look at the chapter summaries for those key points and terms. Make sure we read and take the notes. Make sure we review our notes and understand the material that was discussed. And if you're commuting, or if you're standing in line at the supermarket, you may take a little time to think about the different course material. This is a great time to ask yourself, quiz yourself on terminology. It will help you increase your vocabulary as well as enhance your understanding of the material being taught. If you manage your time wisely, plan ahead, review your notes as necessary, there would be no need to cram. You may consider studying in a group, exchange notes with one another, make sure that your level of understanding is comparable to your fellow students' level of understanding. Make sure that you did not misunderstand something, or that your fellow student didn't misunderstand a point that was being discussed. Test taking, again with the big picture. As far as test taking, if we conduct our reading, take our notes, study accordingly, complete our writing assignments from our notes, and manage our time accordingly, it will reduce our stress and hopefully lead to successful testing. Put the test in perspective. Again, if you have a problem on a particular test, it's not the end of the world. You always want to do your best, but all you're doing when you take a test is putting marks on a piece of paper or on a computer screen. Be prepared, relax, know that you will pass the test. Have some confidence in yourself. When we talk about objective testing, we're talking about multiple choice or true false. When we talk about subjective testing, this is where you will have to provide a short answer or an essay. As far as some multiple choice strategies, make sure you read the question carefully and try to answer the question before you read the choices that are listed. You can strike out any wrong answers, and that will help you eliminate some of the answers on the page. Make sure you are cautious when you are going to change an answer. Typically, your first inclination is correct. Be careful about second guessing yourself. Make sure you read all the options before you make a specific choice. If you don't know an answer, move on. You can always come back and answer the question later. You may end up making an educated guess if you don't know the answer, depending on the type test, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. As far as true-false strategies, read the question carefully. Go with your hunch. Again, be careful about second-guessing yourself. Watch for those key words. Never. Questions that have never in it are typically false. Some relative questions that may use the term some are probably true. And if you have a question with double negatives, it's probably not a truthful answer. Remember, on a true-false, if one part of the question is false, it's all false. And answer all questions unless there is a penalty for guessing. As far as essay question strategies, make sure you read the question carefully. Understand what is the question being asked. Outline your key ideas. It's a great thing to make a real quick outline to ensure that you cover all the required elements when you actually compose your essay. Make sure that you address the question in your opening sentence, and that you make a clear and coherent thesis statement. Also, develop the main body of your essay to support the thesis statement. So whatever you have in your opening paragraph, everything else should support that opening statement. And then at the end, your closing paragraph, make sure you summarize how your thesis is supported. Be aware of your grammar, spelling, and punctuation. And hopefully you have completely answered the question. And always take time to proofread. So, what happens if you don't do well on a specific test? You bombed it. Okay, again, it's not the end of the world. Use that experience to identify the specific causes of the poor performance and work on correcting those causes. And develop some new strategies to improve that particular situation. If you need to, talk to the instructor or a tutor. There's nothing wrong with hiring a tutor if necessary. Okay, cheating can have ugly consequences. We all have conscience. Some are more prevalent than others. If you get caught, you may be humiliated. You may receive a 0 on your exam, or you could even be expelled from the university. If a professor catches you cheating, typically word will get around, so others will be watching closely to ensure you're not cheating in their classes. I've had many students who've asked me to write letters of recommendation over the years. If I had a student who cheated, I'm certain I would not be writing a letter of recommendation. And when you cheat, the person you cheat the most is yourself. Okay, so some of the strategies we talked about: taking and using your course notes, make sure you are disciplined to read and study, work on building your vocabulary, read the assignments, review those notes, ask questions. If necessary, form a study group. Okay, now, anxiety. We all have it. So how do we reduce our testing and anxiety? Prepare. Okay, have a positive attitude. Look at some relaxation techniques. Preparation. You got to be prepared for the test. If you're prepared, you should not have any significant anxiety. Be prepared, relax, know you can do it.